everyone. Thank you for joining my podcast. Welcome to my book presentation. Today we are presenting the complete Maize Meal Cooking Encyclopedia. It's more than a cooking encyclopedia. It has history, it has a biochemistry, it has international policy. Essentially, we joined together Aryan Brito analysis and Aryan crafts, but not the needle one, rather the cooking one. Cooking crafts. I hope you enjoy my presentation. We'll go step by step. Before that, I would just like to mention that in relation to prices, the book, the hardcore cover is £60 per book because just printing costs are awfully high, and we will not make any profit. And we are making a very small margin of profit per sale. And the Kindle is $9.99. Is available as Kindle Unlimited. For 3 months after that, you'll have to purchase and return the book you're reading on the Kindle Unlimited, so you'll no longer have access. Or you can purchase for $9.99 for now. The book has history, homemaker versions, industrial or entrepreneur version, and is an extensive work. We had videos as well available when I was trying the recipes, different recipes. The additives, the baking was hard work, and I never thought it would be so quick. I did envision that would be concluded by July, the latest. But it was good that was all done in the kitchen and with a bit more of help. I'll go through the bibliography. However, though I'm independently doing my work, I do have an account at academia.edu. If you find my profile in there, Erin Denise Brito, you can click on my profile and see the articles, the essays I've been reading and downloading. Otherwise, if you don't have an Academia Edu, don't worry, because I'll go through the bibliography right now. And if I cannot finish today, the work, the baseline, the work, and explain all my new theories and how to apply to cooking international policy, we'll do it separately. So now we will go on to the main bibliography. Why am I using this time to go through the bibliography? Because it was not work done in the vacuum. Yes, you've seen my videos if you're following me in social media, you've seen my videos in social media, trying new recipes and say, yay, finally I got the cubes, the maize cubes. But it was not a work in the vacuum. We had to use books, and we had to make sure that we were applying the right science and technology principles to the production of our work. So let's start. In relation to the bibliography, once again, www.academia edu, click on my profile, Arian Denise Brito, and you'll be able to see all these articles and essays are downloaded, and you can even email me there. Of note, of most important, I'd like to say that I made use of John Andrews' diffusion of the Mesoamerican food complex, so chemistry to Southeastern Europe. It was published in 1993 in the magazine Geographical Review, and I read pages 194 to 204 where this article is. And essentially, the author discussed the historical spread of maize and associated food preparation techniques from Mesoamerica to Southeastern Europe, potentially highlighting the cultural and agriculture exchange. Again, I will say potentially because this was many centuries ago, and we do have our theories about how things interchange, who started what, when, and how, and the chemistry that developed along the preparation and new concepts that came forward. But this is potentially, there will be more works disputing this belief, especially when African scientists start publishing their findings in chronological terms, which is quite important. I also made use of Robert Bird's Quechua and Maize, Mirrors of Central Andean Cultural History, was published in the Journal of the Stuart Anthropological Society, and this was in 1998. Page 187 to 235. His work, and I must say, he had other colleagues like David Bowen and Marshall Durbin. So their work explored the historical and cultural connections between the Quechua people and the Central Andean maize, examining the role in society and history. And this is very useful in understanding the political economy that followed centuries later. I also used J.A. Dudley, Genetics and the Morphological Evolution of Maize. This is available in the Maize Handbook, edited by Michael Freeling and Virginia Walbert, New York, 1996, published by Springer Verlag. And this was just used to inform the public on the genetic mechanisms and morphological change that occurred during the evolution of maize from its wild ancestors. I used this source in the first chapters of my work. Laurie Barkrill Love, modeling the early history of maize in North America and Southwest. This is a paper she presented at the 86th annual meeting. It was an online meeting of the Society of American Archaeology. And it was very recently, it was in 2021. And I found this work very important because she presented like a model, but let's say an analysis of the early introduction and spread of maize cultivation in the North American Southwest, possibly will be disputed later, that history and papers are a lot like that. But I did find that this was more than an introduction, was a model. I would even say a chronometric dating technique applied to the period in question. Next, we have Aderito Monjane and others, et al., reconstructing the history of maize streaks virus strain, a dispersal to reveal diversification hotspots and its origin in Southern Africa, was published by the Journal of Urology in 2011. And I used this article because it details the phylogeographical analysis of maize streak virus strain. And it's a strain A, and it reveals its origins and dispersal patterns in Southern Africa and identifying areas of viral diversification. It does not mean that I agree with all the sources that I used, especially considering that I have my own personal experience, my own history, so to speak. And from what I gather, oral history in West Africa, for example, which I heard from family members, we had the same virus, but was coming from the Sahara, and it is the same insects, always the same insects, but it does not affect all the islands. There was a ban indeed in the St. Anton Island for XYZ period of time regarding production of corn and other staples. But this is the reality of Southern Africa exposed by these academics. Of course, Western African historians and biochemists might have more information regarding the spread and contamination of maize with this strain A. Let's keep going. I also used Nancy Kian and Nathan Nunn's work. They focus on Latin America, which all first chapter started with. And the title of their work is A Colombian Exchange, A History of Disease, Food and Ideas. And this is, again, because I've been telling you that everything is perspective and that everything that other historians that I mentioned might be in the future overtaken by other researchers. This economic perspective provides a broad overview of the Colombian exchange, examining its impact on the global transfer of diseases, food crops, including maize and cultural ideas. This is not their original work. So it's not invented by them. It has been researched in the same terms. It's not Eurocentric, though it does imply, like many of the studies focused in North America, that Europe and the cultural exchange with the conquistadores or the discovery people, Colombo, British courses might have contributed to the expansion, and American colonizers as well might have contributed to expansion, introduction and expansion of viruses, not only human virus, but plant viruses in Latin America, and consequently, of course, contributed to the pandemics and the diseases that followed, and hunger periods that followed in certain periods of history. José Jesus and Gonçalo Sanchez, a work titled Modern Variability and Patterns of Maize Movement in Mesoamerica. This was published in A Corn and Culture in the Prehistoric. So the article titled In Corn and Culture in the Prehistoric New World was edited by Cecil Johansson and Boulder, Westview, 1994. And why have I found this chapter important? Because it discussed the diversity of maize varieties in Mesoamerica and the historical patterns of how these different types of maize have been cultivated and moved throughout the region. Because, as you know, if you're already acquainted to the Encyclopedia, we did try to provide historical background and a chronological geographical expansion that aligned with the political economy of the exploration of maize in subsequent centuries, because we felt that it was important to understand how the different cooking and processing techniques influenced the economy of these nations, of these geographical areas, and how our work and our proposals for new preparation techniques will unavoidably contribute to the political economy, hopefully in better terms, of the African continent. We used the work of R. Hayes and Sher and L. Bush, The Terminal History of Maize Kernels Determined by Electron Spin Resonant, published in Archaeometry, 43, number 3, 2001, pages 407, 419. Because we found that it would be important for the reader to understand how archaeometry describes the use of electron spin resonance to determine the thermal history of maize kernels, a technique likely used for dating or understanding past processing methods, but today with IT we no longer require. And I find that this is very important because if you notice in the book, I mention malnutrition crisis throughout history. I mentioned in Europe, the conferences that were produced by leading scientists and the medicine scientists to determine why maize meal was causing very serious skin problems in Europe. And I used it further to mention how maize meal is still not fully nourishing the mothers in my gender economy policy chapter, and how we can reinforce maize to be the right nutritious meal for mothers and children alike. And that's why I found this work very important, and many others that I use as well in the field of um, thermal metrics and archaeometry. I use the word Higgins, Thompson, and Gibson, Coastal W, improving the sensitivity of progressive multiple sequence alignment through sequence weighting, position-specific gap penalties and weight matrix choice, was published in Nucleic Acids Research 22, page 4673 to 4680. Of course, this is an old work, 1994, but was vital because it described the cluster W algorithm, a tool used for multiple sequence alignments in genetic analysis, which may have been applied to maize genetic studies. Also, I want to tell you that in my work, throughout my work, you see a lot of symbols and you think, oh, she must have got it wrong. The dollar symbol, then this and the other symbol, is because often I have to present the maize measurements, not just the rotation, but the volume, and so we use different measurements to calculate, and then we have to present. So everyone that's reading the book, from someone who does not know anything of the matter to someone who knows something about the matter, can, if it's in a factory, for example, just check what I am saying, enter the details, and instead of text and maize or the staple, and substitute text for maize, blah, blah, staple, and do the calculations and do the industrial processing, or even understand the rotation cycles necessary during the maize farming and production. So if it's not your field, just pay attention to the recipes because they are very nice and nutritious. What else have you used? So we spoke about this tool used for multiple sequence alignment in genetic analysis. I use also Raymond J.S. work and Van der Verve work titled Light Stable Isotopes and the Subsistence-Based Formative Cultures at Valdivia, Ecuador, in prehistoric human bone archaeology of the molecular level. So this was vital because their work explored the dietary patterns of formative cultures in Ecuador, specifically at Valdivia, using stable isotope analysis of human bone to understand their subsistence strategies, including maize consumption. I also found in this line of showing the archaeology and archaeometrics and expansion of the maize cultivation and consumption. The work of Verzani A very useful, titled Recombination, Decreased host specificity and increased mobility may have driven the emergence of maize streak virus as an agricultural pathogen. So Verzani investigated the evolutionary factors such as genetic recombination and changes in host specificity that contributed to the emergence of maize strike virus as significant agricultural pathogen. In Latin America, in Asia, in Africa, we all had different maize meal viruses that turned into nightmarish pathogens that influenced the political economy of civilizations. That's why we couldn't leave these matters out. Tatiana Veronina's work titled Maize Natural History is available in Encyclopedia of Food and Culture, Volume 2, and was edited by Solomon H. Katz and William Boyce Weaver, New York, 2003. And in her Encyclopedia article, she provided a general overview of the natural history of maize, covering its origins, evolution, and biological characteristics. However, my encyclopedia is specifically focused in maize, not only maize history, but the production and the techniques that can indeed change the international political economy of especially the African continent, but moving forward to G20. So we had to bring innovative techniques, we had to provide analysis, and we had to provide a more detailed work, which I did because it was specific and part of my work, so it's not just an article. Hence why our work is far more in depth. Her work is not the only one that we used for the general broad history. We also used the natural history of maize, which is available online on Academia. You can even download it as a PDF. And we used the histories of maize, multidisciplinary approaches to the prior history, which is available on Google Books, if I'm not mistaken, so you don't need a membership of Academia Edu. And we use other ones to check the chronological, the more detailed chronology of the maize history expansion. We used, for example, when I was looking at the virus and the pathology of the health issues in Europe, and why maize was deemed from then on malnutritious and causing severe skin problems. We used a book titled The History of Pellagra in Italy, and this was published by the Istituto Italiano di Antropologia. And it's available in this website of the Institute, which is www.isita.org.com. And it's the general overview of the pellagra in Italy, which is a serious condition, and how it was linked to the maize consumption without nixtamalization. We will get into the nixtamalization and the different processes of transform and techniques of transformation of maize, but not yet. We're still discussing the history sources because of this chapter is about history. The Columbian Exchange, A History of Disease, Food and Ideas. I found that this was available at Harvard more as a review because it has been consistently researched. It has been consistently written about. And sometimes you just have to say, okay, you're publishing your work, but it's not really innovative, is it? And the Harvard scholars just provide an update on the journal or article by Nan and Kian, which I referred initially in this podcast. And it's just, again, the economic perspective on the Columbian Exchange and its impact on the global transfer of diseases, food, and ideas. We also published the findings, historical data, which was sourced from the government of India and Latin American governments, and this in particular estimating maize genetic erosion in modernized smallholder agriculture. PMC so has been used by different international authorities, but PubMed Central is a database that brings together main researchers, work of main researchers, and I found this database very useful, just like I find the Academia Edu. Please do follow me there, okay? Moving on to my chapter 2, sources. Which were my favorite ones and most important? Definitely El Said and his colleagues. The work titled The Utilization Status of Corn Processing Byproducts and Future Development Trends, published in the Biotechnology and Genetic Engineering Reviews, issue 37, was a recent work, 2021. And Syed and his colleagues examined the current utilization of byproducts from corn processing and explores future trends in their development in the context of biotechnology and genetic engineering. But my work, I went further than that. I created byproducts with the right chemistry formulas, right steps, right temperatures, right storage, I divided the home producer, mommies and daddies alike, or just single people, from the industrial producer and from the entrepreneur. So it's not a future trend, is the future steps for successful economic policy that the G20 should listen to and adopt. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Other words I used on my second chapter, Ginting and R.S. Devi, or Devi in India, he started the effect of increasing pre-gelatinized taro starch temperature as diluent on compressibility and comprimability. And Biosciences was published in 2020. And Ginting and Devi investigate the impact of temperature during the pre-gelatinization of taro starch on the compressibility of granules, especially in the context of thiamine hydrochloride compression. While not directly about maize, it provides a scientific basis for understanding starch properties. I'd like to say that it's not directly about maize, but you'll notice that a lot of the new processing techniques I brought forward about maize, they involve pressing, blending, and playing with temperature. From creating the soluble maize meal coffee, to creating the stock cubes, which I shared the videos a few weeks ago, I had to get the right temperature. And with stocks, is all about gelatinization, especially when you're adding the stock to the maize, because the right density produced by the right proportions and by the right temperature helped me make sure that my products at home, byproducts of maize, stay longer in the freezer and are healthier and are safer for consumption. And that is why I shouldn't be doing this right now, but I want to fetch some of my cubes that I have been recently right back. These are some of my maize meal cubes, stock cubes I made live and I shared with my friends. And the reason I was so happy, so happy, is that I got the right consistency and I got the right color and I got the right effect and I got the right flavor. And I couldn't be happy. I just said, and I finally made it. You know, what it started with, it started the gelatinization of the product that I was adding, chicken stock. And then I was explaining my friends on the videos, which you'll see soon, or maybe if I have time today, that's was shared via WhatsApp, on how they could add coconut oil, how they could add the cheese, which I also ended up sharing on the Encyclopedia. So pre-gelatinization and understanding the process was vital to make many of the products innovative products. And I couldn't be happier for science, for validating the terms of the work I do, but most importantly, for providing us with the scientific guidelines to have the right temperature that safeguards consumers at home and industrial settings when they have to try the products they have been stored for weeks to see if it's still okay. With the cubes, what do I find most important is the color and the texture, because I also want to see that it blended well at the molecular level, because certain products always have different limits to when they are okay or when they can potentially become harmful. and mixing protein, vegetable protein, and animal protein. We always have to have that in question, and especially when introducing different gelatinization processes. For example, in here I used more than one. I used one specific for the meat and the stock, and then I use another one for the maize meal. So again, the temperature was the right setting. You have to have a kitchen thermometer if you're doing it at home, and also then to freeze it. It has to be in the right combination, and I'm very happy with the product. So now we move to other um, sources of my work. Um, Al-Johani et al. Evaluation of rheological and textural properties of different starches and their mixtures was published fairly recently, in 2016, in the magazine Food Hydrocolloids, issue 56. And he evaluates the rheological and textural characteristics of various starches and their combinations, providing insights into how different starches behave in food systems. I found that tremendously determinant in the results of recipes, especially when moving from cooking to baking, because you have to have a certain level of raising. And the starches can be very important in determining the binding of the flours and the success of the recipe, therefore. So with normal flours, you just have to worry about the proportions, right? 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of sugar, 2 or 3 eggs. Everything has to be proportioned so it lasts longer, is healthier, is tastier, softer. But with mixing different flours and starches, especially maize meal, the chief byproducts, because now byproducts are a whole different game. We have to get the right textures, we have to get the right starches, and sometimes I have to say, I'm sorry, folks, I'm telling you to use a cassava starch with the maize, because if you use the other starch or go and get some baking soda, I wish you like that will not have that effect on the cooking. Hence why we use different starches. I use also the Al Ahmad article titled Proximate Analysis and Mineral Content of 3 Commonly Used Seasonings in Nigeria, published in the Journal of Food Science and Nutrition, was issue 7. And I found this article very important because it presented approximate, almost determinate analysis when he was determining the mineral content of common seasonings used in Nigeria, which are relevant to the flavor and nutritional aspects of maize meal additives. As you see, I gave different additives in my flavoring session. So I created my own additives, which you have the maize cubes. But aside creating my own additives, I also brought forward traditional local seasonings from West Africa, Southern Africa, when doing the mealing, the Southern African bread. So I had to use strong academic references um, that reflect almost accurately the mineral content and flavoring of certain seasonings, because sometimes you're mixing starches, you're mixing minerals, and you don't want to mix to the point where products will vinaigrate or be damaging for livers, etc. So everything has to be perfect, healthy, and if possible, have the right vitamins and nutrients to enrich a maize meal, because that's the main staple you're working. I use several references to Knorr. Knorr is the favorite bouillon in Europe and the Western world. And I found their site quite useful, especially to gather information and discuss new why. Okay, was not fair. I did use their site to criticize them. Look at them; they have too much sodium. Look at this salt. Oh my gosh, and the stock and the fat. Fine enough, I confess, but was useful to gain an insight of the pressing techniques, because not everyone wants to use the pressing techniques, but I do find that the pressing techniques are very useful in containing and making the cubes. But hey, I have different types of cubes in my freezer where I just rolled and I have not pressed. Was it the right method? No. Definitely, if you can use the baking sheets at home, if you don't have a pressing machine, and press your product before cutting it and say, okay, now I have the cubes. You are doing a safer process that will keep your cubes in better standardized way, especially in terms of observing. But once it goes in the water, I will tell you, you can sense the smell, you can see the right texture, like you see in my videos, and say, yes, this is the healthy maize meal, because cubes. Because remember, it's my innovation, and I have to tell you how when is okay. And fortunately, it's very healthy, so it's always okay. So now, else could I share about my work? I like to share the whole structure of the work if we have time. I can come back later. Would you like me to come back later? Say, should we have a 10 minutes break and we come back? I see you short. Thank you for joining me.